Some are saying that visa-free travel is dead. Less sensationally, it is getting harder to travel all around the world with new visa requirements that are even affecting Americans and Europeans. And today we're going to talk about why visa-free travel is getting harder and what you can do about it. Before we dive into this, let me give you my perspective. I wrote the book, Nomad Capitalist. I run a company that helps millionaires and multimillionaires live overseas, sometimes in different places. I work with a lot of global citizens, what we call nomad capitalists, and so we are constantly traveling. This will affect your summer holiday, but it's going to more affect people who are constantly on the go. Here's the good news. What we think of as visa-free travel is actually opening up. China, for example, has become a relatively visa-free country. When I first went there 17 years ago, almost everyone needed to get a visa, certainly from the West. Now, a lot of nationalities don't need a visa or there's some kind of transit exemption. Russia and Belarus before the war were really opening up to the West and allowing more people to come in. African countries are opening up. And what we're seeing is more small countries are getting together. I recently saw that Georgian citizens can now go without a visa to Paraguay. So you're seeing these small countries getting together and opening up their visa policies. In general, traveling around the world is getting easier. But it's the countries like Paraguay and Georgia and China that are getting easier. What's getting harder is a lot of countries are requiring forms, and a lot of countries are now requiring what are called electronic travel authorizations, or ETAs. These can often be more difficult than visa applications. If you look at the original one, the US ESTA, which is required for anyone who's not Canadian to file to come into the United States, I don't think I've ever applied for a tourist visa in any country that was harder and had more questions than that ESTA. So I remember right after I renounced my US citizenship, at the time, I didn't have a passport that gave me visa-free travel to Thailand. I do now, and I now have that visa-free access, but I went and got a visa. I filled out a one-page form, I paid $36, I handed it over, and I came back the next day, and there's my visa. I would rather do that than fill out an ESTA to go to the United States. And what you're seeing is a lot of countries are borrowing what the United States did and introducing their own ETAs, which is adding a level of delay and adding a level of effort into going to a lot of countries. My bigger concern with this is, what are these ETAs asking? With the US ESTA program, it has long been the fact that if you've been to Iran or Somalia or countries like that, you had to go in and get a visa. Even if you were British or French or Singaporean, they just didn't like that. And we've had a few clients that they went on a tourist adventure to Iran. They're not part of any terrorist group. They just wanted to go on a trip. And they got their US visa, but it took a lot more effort. Now the US has said, on ESTA, have you ever been to Cuba? There's like literally millions of Europeans who have been to Cuba. They are now ineligible to simply turn up at the United States border, even after filling out this very long ESTA form. And so what we're seeing, and what my fear is that a handful of legacy brand countries are going to make it very difficult to get in, and they're going to impose the exact kind of judgment that the Georgias, Paraguays, and even Chinas don't have. So where are these ETAs? Well, there's the US, and it is used as a political tool. If you're Hungarian, you can use ESTA. You can allegedly go to the United States visa-free. But if you were not born in Hungary, you can't. One thing we offer our clients as a standalone service is citizenship by descent. And we've helped people get citizenship in a number of European countries, such as Hungary, because they have ancestors from there. But if you weren't born in Hungary, the US believes because of political motives, your passport's probably a sham, and so you need to apply for a regular visa. That process can take up to 2 years in some countries. And so if you were born in Serbia to Hungarian parents right there in the border, your passport says born in Serbia, you are not eligible the same way other EU citizens would be to travel to the United States. And so they've made it a political issue. Canada, Australia, New Zealand have rolled out their ETAs. I did the one in Australia once when I was a US citizen. It was pretty easy. But again, can these countries introduce where, we don't like if you do this, we don't like if you do that? Now, I'm not saying that's not their right to do that, but at a certain point, what I've determined at 40 years old is I'm not going to live for the benefit of the Canadian government. I was invited to give a speech in Canada, and they were going to pay me pretty well. I said, it's just not worth the hassle. Canada is one of a very small number of countries that I need a visa to go to. I don't want to get a visa. It's a laborious process. I don't care. I'm sorry. Thank you for inviting me. I'm just not going. I don't want to go to Canada. It's not the kind of place that I want to go. And so I think we look at it as, it has to go both ways. Sure, Canada can have whatever rules they want. And like any good boundary that your psychologist would talk to you about, my boundary is I just don't want to participate. I don't think that they're going to be missing out by me not going. I'm not threatening. I'm not cajoling. I'm just saying it's not for me. And I think that's the mindset that more of us should have, is that when countries put up these barriers, let's simply not go there. South Korea followed. They have an ETA now. I find South Korea to be a pretty non-judgmental country. Out of all the countries I've mentioned so far, that's the one I would be happy to go to with one of my passports, including my St. Lucian citizenship by investment. I think South Korea doesn't really care, as most Asian countries don't, where you're from. They just take it. I remember going to Singapore once. I had a Comoros passport, and the guy looked at the list, and he said, well, it says, okay, here you go. Whereas, if you did that in Australia, I bet they'd redo the Riot Act. Now the United Kingdom is introducing an ETA. They started it with some Gulf countries. Now they're going to be expanding it to everybody. If you want to go to the UK, you're seeing there's a big brouhaha. I think it was Heathrow Airport complaining, we're losing transit passengers because of some of these new restrictions. And I've long thought that. I think London's a fun city, but if I can choose to fly through somewhere, I'm never going to fly through the UK. It is much more intrusive and much more laborious. Listen, they're entitled to run their country however they want. And I and billions of other people are entitled to travel how we want. And you know what I say? Go where you're treated best. I will fly through Frankfurt. I'll fly through Madrid. I'll fly through Istanbul every day before I fly through the UK. And they just made it more difficult. And now Thailand, a country that I wouldn't entirely expect this from, but they are, they do have a brand name within Asia, and they do leverage that. By June of 2025, travelers will reportedly need an electronic travel authorization to take advantage of the visa waiver. Now, those are countries that are introducing ETAs. Could more countries do it? Yes. I don't think you're going to see a country like Georgia, which wants you to go. They've literally given away bottles of wine to foreigners when you go, and they give you a 1-year visa free. They're not looking to make it harder for people to come. That's the kind of country I like. And by the way, those countries often have reasonable or low or zero or special tax incentives. They often have very warm and nice people. They often have very functional bureaucracies. It's part of a cultural ecosystem, in my opinion. I want to go where I'm wanted. I want to go where I'm welcomed. I want to go where I'm treated best. And you know what? I was talking to a woman about this the other day. She said, a lot of my friends would like to move to Milan, but she says, I'm not like them. I want to go places that are off the beaten path. But she says sometimes it's hard because, their peer pressure is a thing. I, at 40 years old, have totally gotten over the peer pressure, and I think you should too. If you want to go to the UK, great. I don't judge you. But what I found is I enjoy myself a hell of a lot more in other places. We filmed Live Like a King Penang. It's a coastal city here in Malaysia. And I stay at the E&O Hotel for $210 a night. And I get a beautiful ocean view suite. You get unlimited minibar in the room. You get breakfast. You get a happy hour with drinks and snacks. They roll out the red carpet for you for $210 a night. And then I go to Montreux in Switzerland, the Montreux Jazz Festival. I had a not so great experience. And I paid, I don't know what it was. It must have been at least 1,200 francs, and I don't recall. But 5, 6, 7 times the price. I feel worse. Now, if you told the average person, would you like to go to Montreux, Switzerland? Or Penang, Malaysia? I don't know, Penang, Malaysia. Yeah, Switzerland, that's my place. Right, when you actually go to these places, you'll be like, Malaysia. Okay, they do have a Malaysian digital arrival card. If you're coming to Nomad Capitalist Live for our 4-day event, you're going to want to fill out that arrival card. It's going to just ask you, hey, how long are you here? So that's not a full ETA, but it's an arrival card. But it is the thing you have to do. But once you fill out that card, you're going to have a delightful experience at immigration. You're going to have a delightful experience with everybody that you talk to in Malaysia, more so than you would in a lot of places in Europe. And I think that we want to get out of this kind of name brand mentality, and you want to go where you're treated best. Now, let's talk about the second problem. Visa-free days aren't always counted. We talked about the UK. I haven't had any experiences personally. When I go to the UK, they give you a stamp, and it's kind of the default stamp. You get 180 days visa-free. Now, if you tell them you're there for 180 days, I think they're gonna ask you a lot of questions. And I've seen that in the UK and also in the Republic of Ireland, where they don't want, you're not allowed to go there and work as a digital nomad. You're just not allowed to do that. You're allowed to go as a tourist. So I'll go, hey, I'm here for 2 days. I'm doing some shopping, then I'm flying out to the next place, whatever. Okay, no problem. Here's your 180. But I think, in theory, some people will get less than that. And certainly if you're coming and going more frequently, we've had clients tell us they really ask you a lot of questions at the UK. Why are you coming and going so frequently? Even if you're within your 180 days, you just do it in chunks. Mexico, another country that says it's 180 days. One of the reasons why we don't have Nomad Capitalist live in Mexico anymore, at least for now, is Mexican visa policy has gotten tougher. And even people who don't need a visa, they're saying, I went and they said, how long are you here? I said, I'm here. I'm in the presidential suite. I'm working with a hotel. We're having an event. We're going to be spending like $1 million and we're bringing people to Nomad Capitalist Live. Oh, yeah, great. 9 days. Here's your 10-day visa. When the guy in the presidential suite gets 10 out of 180 days, that means that you're not going to be able to go to these places as long. And certainly what you've seen is people would live in Mexico on tourist visas. Now, Mexico is such an easy residence program to qualify for. I don't know why you would bother with that. Why would you live on a tourist visa when you can get a residence permit instead? That's my general belief. But it's becoming harder to travel. And so countries are cracking down. Thailand's another one. They don't want people doing visa runs. Now, I think Georgia and Malaysia and some of the countries that I really love, I think part of what I love about them is they are open and they are coming flexible to okay, if people are coming and spending money, we're going to leave them alone. The big one that a lot of Americans have been concerned about is Europe. It's been years delayed. It's called ETIAS, E-T-I-A-S. It's Europe's answer to ESTA. And that means everybody who's not a European Union member state citizen will need to complete very soon this ETIAS to come into Europe, to the Schengen area. And so if you want to go to France, if you want to go to Spain, your days of just taking a flight and showing up at the airport are over. This has been much talked about in the US media and in other countries, Canada, Australia, you all have to do it, that this is Europe's sort of retaliation where you'll have to go through this. Will they be judgy? I would say less so than the English-speaking countries, but could they throw something in there that checks where you've been or does something like that? Sure, of course they could. So, bottom line is, more countries are asking for more intrusive information. I think more Western and legacy brand countries could judge you on arrival or even not even issue you an ETA. And once you get there, they may not give you the full amount of time. Again, if you're going to Mexico for a week-long holiday, there's no issue. If you're going to slow travel and investigate some cities in Mexico you want to live in, yeah, I think that might be a bigger issue. Fine, let's go through the solutions. Number one, don't go to countries that have these requirements. Now, I don't think Thailand's ETA is going to be nearly as bad. I really don't think that, again, most Asian countries want to judge you. I don't think, some Western countries want to judge you either, but some certainly do. Oh, you have that poor passport. Oh, you've been there. What's going on? They don't do that in the global South, generally speaking, with the exception of maybe some Arab countries with Israel. I happen to prefer the global South for the reasons that I mentioned. If where am I excited about going in the next year? I'm excited about going to Cambodia and staying at the Raffles Hotel, or maybe the Rosewood Hotel. I'm excited about going to Hong Kong for the first time in years. I'm excited about going to Argentina. I'm looking forward to checking out Africa. That's what intrigues me. So you can just go to the places that I'm going to, and you can stay in the equivalent of the E&O Hotel in Penang for $210 a night. And quite frankly, I think of a much better life. You'll see things that are up and coming. Number two is if you're living a nomadic lifestyle, as I somewhat do, I mostly have residence permits where I spend any amount of time, or citizenships, but slower travel where you're just going to go to fewer places, obviously. Fewer ETAs to fill out if you move more slowly. That's not going to work in the UK. It's not going to work in anywhere like Mexico or Thailand where they just don't like people maxing out their visa-free or doing visa runs. But you can still go to Europe and spend 90 days every 180. You can go to South Korea. You can travel more slowly. The third thing you can do is you can simply get more residence permits. I feel better having residence permits or citizenships than arriving as a tourist. I feel just physically a sense of calm knowing I come here, I've already been reviewed, I'm going to go through a shorter queue, I'm getting in as a resident or as a citizen. And so that factors into what we talk about here. Our clients, again, have $1 million or more in liquid assets, or they have a high income, $500,000 or more. Either way, you have money to put into residence permits. If you don't want to have to invest a lot of money, then Latin America has a lot of countries like Mexico where you prove your income, you get a residence permit. You don't have to buy property or open a bank account or do any of that. Most Central and South American countries have something like that. A number of countries throughout Europe and elsewhere have digital nomad visas. Those may or may not have tax consequences. They certainly don't lead to citizenship, almost all cases. But those are ways you can get residence permits affordably. So if you're living my trifecta method, you have 3 homes that you spend time in around the world. One or more of them could be in Latin America or on a digital nomad visa, and you don't have to invest much there. If you want to come to Places like in Asia, that's going to be where wealth gets you a residence permit. Put money in the bank, buy stocks, buy a property. That'll get you in. And by the way, for some people, getting citizenship, if you like spending time in the Caribbean, get a Caribbean citizenship by investment. You can live in a handful of different countries across the Caribbean region, some of which are actually tax-free countries. And so this is the kind of thing that we work with our clients on. I believe that the average person who's traveling around the world needs more residence permits because this is the direction that things are going. When you have a residence permit, you often, not always, but you often are exempt from a lot of these requirements of forms to fill out and things to do because you've already been approved. And so if you want to figure out where you want to go, which residence permits you want, which citizenships you want, how your taxes work, particularly if you're traveling in different places, you go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply. What I think is most important to note here is, Americans, they're not used to this. Americans think, hey, I'll just show up wherever I want and I can just get in. We've had Americans, very wealthy Americans, be like, I didn't realize I just couldn't come to Europe and stay forever. And so this is a sort of wake-up call for folks who believe I can just go anywhere I want. We're seeing people being given shorter tourist visas. We're seeing people being asked for more documentation, even Americans, even Europeans. We're seeing more people need to go through steps rather than just turning up at the border to actually get this. And so when you factor all that in, I travel all the time. I live this. I feel how much better it is to have residence permits and citizenships and be a welcomed guest and to spend time in places that are tax-friendly and that are welcoming for me. It's a whole lifestyle. If you come to Nomad Capitalist Live, our 4-day event, you'll see it. If you want to work with us to build that, you can. nomadcapitalist.com/apply. We will help you create a lifestyle that lets you travel where you're welcomed.
This is an 18th century palace in Lisbon, Portugal, and it's literally one of the most elegant fine dining restaurants anywhere in Europe. And I'm going to be showing you luxury living in Portugal here, and showing you penthouses and palaces for sale that you can live in with some of the best views of the city. And taking you to an exclusive members club that you can join where old money and new money meet here in Lisbon. We're shopping for top brands along Lisbon's 5th Avenue, visiting a catamaran in Lisbon's harbor to show you how you can buy a boat here, and meeting Michelin star chefs and drinking amazing Portuguese wine to show you the good life in Lisbon. This is how to live like a king.